Tomorrow, the deadline is 5 p.m. for counties to certify the results and get those to the Secretary of State. However, Stacey Abrams has, two lawsuits pending, one trying to move that deadline to Wednesday, and she's also trying to get absentee ballots that have been thrown out counted. So we are on that. We will see you again, Lisa Booth.
Okay, thank you, Tucker. Have a great night.
Hillary Clinton could run for president in 2020. One of her former close advisors is saying that. Mark Stein joins us after the break. Tell us what that might mean. Stay tuned. People always say Hillary Clinton is no artist, but the creativity she's displayed in explaining the reasons that she lost to Trump in 2016, remarkable.
The use of my email account was turned into, the biggest scandal since Lord knows when. They covered it like it was Pearl Harbor. If you look at Facebook, the vast majority of the news items posted were fake. There's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites. I inherit nothing from the Democratic Party. I also think I was the victim of a very broad assumption I was going to win.
We could spend the entire hour playing tapes of all the various ways the election was stolen from her. Anything to avoid confronting the real reasons, apparently. Well, now, longtime advisor to Hillary Clinton, Mark Penn, says that she may indeed try again, a third run at the White House in 2020.
A lot of Democrats think she was unfairly denied winning the last presidential race. She's a pro, and she learns, and Clintons never stop until they get where they want to go, and I say don't count her out.
Author and columnist Mark Stein joins us tonight. So, Mark, so we're treating this like it's crazy. I know both you and I are thinking this is insane, but why is it insane, actually? She is the standard bearer for the Democratic Party. It was stolen from her by the Macedonian data farms. We've agreed on that for a long time. Why wouldn't she be the presumptive nominee, seriously, right now?
Well, I do think it makes a lot of sense. If the 2020 election were to be a rerun of Hillary versus Trump, when the Florida Democrats decide to steal it, then the Broward and Palm Beach County guys will already have the 2016 ballot sitting around in the cupboard, so they won't have to stay up all night running the photocopier as they are at the moment. So it does have a lot to commend it. And Hillary's rationale that she lost because everybody was expecting her to win. She's like I think it was the Yogi Berra joke, that it's, whatever the line was, it's such a popular restaurant, nobody goes there. And that's basically the Hillary campaign. But she's convinced that the third time will be the charm. And I don't rule her out because compared to Bernie and Joe Biden, she has the bloom of youth upon her.
What would she run on? What she ran on last time? Vote for me or you're immoral?
Well, I think she should actually go back to where she was in the early 90s when she was the crazy left-winger who believed in universal health care. Then she became the centrist Senate candidate. Then she ran last time as basically this kleptocrat who was raking in the big bucks from Kazakh oligarchs and various Saudi princes. So basically, the Democrat Party has slid to where she was circa 1992. You can see why she's kind of annoyed that she doesn't get the credit for that.
No, that's such a good point. And do you remember that? I mean, you were around. I was too. People thought that she was really left-wing before she went full-blown corporate Walmart board member, apologist for big tech. If she returns to that, she might have a shot. For real.
Yeah, no, she was. If you remember, she was, I mean, people don't remember this, but her mentor was Jessica Mitford of the English Mitford sisters, who was the left-wing communist Mitford sister. So then she moves to the center, becomes one of these third-way Democrats. Then she becomes, as I said, one of these kleptocrat centrist Democrats. Meanwhile, the party all has slid to the left because all the romance is on the far left. And I do think, in fairness to her, that as stiff and incompetent and incapable of connecting with the voters as she is, that she's learned her lessons from last time. Last time, Trump's Russian pals bought $100,000 worth of Facebook ads and stole the election from her. So she figures if she can get a Kazakh warlord to give her 200 grand to spend Facebook ads on, she can steal the 2020 election back from the Macedonian content farmers, and it will be justice.
When she shows up with a Che Guevara t-shirt, we'll know she's taking your advice. Mark Stein, great to see you.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
Democrats just retook the House. It'll be official in January. First order of business, waging war on the president with the subpoena cannon. What does that mean exactly? Details after the break. Well, starting in January, Democrats will once again have control of the House of Representatives after 8 years. And there's a lot of things they could do with that new power. They might even collaborate with the president on a few things, fighting the heroin epidemic, for example, or repairing our crumbling infrastructure. But for incoming Intel Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, there is another priority, helping powerful tech companies, to which he is totally beholden. President Trump has been pressuring the Postal Service to hike rates on Amazon, which he says is getting unfairly low rates and shafting taxpayers. Schiff is outraged, though, that anyone might complain about this, might complain that the world's richest man is exploiting the United States and ripping off taxpayers on postal rates. In fact, he thinks that criticism is likely a crime worthy of an investigation. That's not the only crime that Schiff sees. He also wants to investigate the Trump administration's opposition to AT&T's $85 billion takeover of Time Warner because CNN is owned by Time Warner. That's what the left-wing resistance is becoming, a platform for protecting the world's most powerful corporations. In fact, that's what it's always been. Well, defending powerful tech monopolies may be a top Democratic concern, but it's not their only one. Democrats say they're preparing a subpoena cannon that will target nearly 100 different Trump-related targets, from his tax returns to Jared Kushner to the implementation of the travel ban, the proposed ban on transgenders in the military, etc. What are voters going to think of that? Julian Epstein is former chief counsel of Democrats in the House Judiciary Committee. He joins us tonight. So, Julian, thanks a lot for coming on. I think we both agree that the Congress does have a constitutional responsibility of oversight. I think we probably also agree that Republicans have done a lot of foolish nonsense like this, too, over the years. Conceded. They also just lost the House.
We agree.
Right. So,
we agree on three things.
Yeah. So my question is, though, does investigating the president's meeting with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki last summer, is that going to lower health insurance rates at all, do you think?
Well, we also agree that I think Democrats should look to work with Republicans on a whole host of things. I think in particular, last time I was on the show, we agreed that both political parties for the last couple of decades have ignored the middle class. I mean, the middle class has had an economic recession since about 1975, and neither party has really put forward a meaningful agenda to address the middle class and the working class. So I completely agree with you on that, and I completely agree that both parties are guilty of not doing that. As far as investigations, I think we've learned something from the many investigations over the last 20, 25 years. Benghazi and Fast and Furious and the investigations Democrats did into Iraq when the Democrats were in control from 2006 to 2010. And that is, in order for an investigation to be successful, it's got to be bipartisan. You've got to work with the other side, and you've got to make a compelling case, not just to the other party, but to the American public, that you're not trying to score political points. What you're doing is the people's business, the constitutional duty, as you allude to it,
I agree.
to do meaningful oversight, to make sure people are playing by the rules. As far as a subpoena cannon, on the two committees that I was a staff director of the Government Oversight Committee and then chief counsel of Judiciary, we got into a lot of subpoena fights. The one thing that I think a lot of people on the left don't realize, and I think Jerry Nadler and some of the others are proper in chastening people on the left a little bit, is that subpoenas are exceedingly difficult to enforce. You remember Fast and Furious in 2011 and 2012?
Very well.
There was a subpoena for the Justice Department documents. There was a fight back and forth. That went on for about 3 years before House Republicans finally gave up on it. It's incredibly difficult. The courts insist that the two branches, the legislative branch and the executive branch, exhaust all the options before they go to the the courts to try and enforce a subpoena. Even then, you can have endless appeals. And people, the executive branch can run the clock. And that's all the more important that if the Democratic investigations are going to be effective, they are, one, going to have to appeal to the sense of kind of civic duty on part of Republicans to play a meaningful role and make the case to the public that this is not about scoring points against Trump. This is not about trying to win the election in 2020. This is about meaningful and important oversight
it's
that there
a
should
totally
be
fair
bipartisan
point.
agreement on.
If they can do that, I'll be impressed. Julian Epstein, thank you. As
Well,
always,
I certainly am urging them to do that.
yeah,
So.
well, I hope they listen. They never will, but I hope they do. Thank you. Well, the French president just attacked our president for backing something dangerous called nationalism. Is this country suffering from too much nationalism or too little? What is nationalism anyway? One of the world's experts on the subject joins us next.
Patriotism is the exact opposite of nationalism. Nationalism is a betrayal of patriotism by saying, our interests first, who cares about the others? We erase what a nation holds dearest.
That was the French president making an oblique and hard to understand and therefore incredibly French point. It was, of course, a criticism of Donald Trump. It came during the commemorations of World War I in France, the 100-year anniversary of the armistice. President Trump has called himself a nationalist. He said that right before the midterm election. He was vilified for that in this country. But if you take a deep breath, you have to ask yourself, in an increasingly fractured America, could it be that we need more nationalism and not less? Nicholas Giordano is a professor of political science at Suffolk Community College, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks a lot for coming on. Tell us what nationalism actually is. If you could sum it up as crisply as you can, what is nationalism?
Hi, Tucker. Nationalism is important because it's what links us together as a country. We are a nation state. And so when you're looking at the concept of nationalism, it's the acceptance of the American creed, the tenets of the American creed, as well as it helps us to motivate us to help our country. Nationalism is one of the most important concepts out there, and Macron's just wrong. It's as simple as that.
Well, so, I mean, the knock against nationalism is that there's something racially exclusive or racist about it. Is it inherently a racial creed? Does it have anything to do with race?
No, it doesn't. What nationalism does, it fosters the democratic consciousness. And that's an important point that people get wrong. We have a stake in the system. We are the legitimate authority over the system as the people of the United States. Prior to nationalism, loyalty was to one leader. Now it's to the country as a whole, and nationalism fosters patriotism. In my classroom, I use Hurricane Harvey as a great example. During Harvey, you had citizens affected by the hurricane took their own boats, their private boats, and they went and they helped out their fellow citizens. They didn't say this is the black boat and the white boat's 15 minutes behind us. They didn't say this is the Republican boat or the Democrat boat. They were just out there to help Americans, and that's what nationalism fosters. If you look at countries without nationalism, nationalism defeats tribalism. So Afghanistan, Libya, those countries are where tribalism is enforced. There's no loyalty to the country of Afghanistan as a whole or Libya as a whole. And that's why those countries have been engaged in tribal warfare for the last 3,000 years.
It's so nicely put, what you just said. And it also, now that you say it, it's such an obvious point. Why would there be such a loud caucus against nationalism, against national unity?
Well, I think there's two things going on. When you look at someone like President Macron of France, I think he likes the idea of transnationalism, trying to replace the idea of nationalism with this regional nationalism. And then for other people, if we look at the United States, the people that say that nationalism is a bad thing or nationalism is racist, I think they just aren't necessarily proud of the country that the United States is. They focus on all the bad that the United States has done. And they don't look at the positives of how the United States has actually changed the world.
Well, exactly. Professor, that was such a nice explanation. I hope you'll join us again. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's been a tough week. It's been a tough year. And when things get tough, we break the glass in case of emergency and invite on Mike Rowe. And this time we're going all out. He is bringing his mother. So what is she doing with him on our set tonight? You will find out after the break. Well, Mike Rowe has, of course, long been a champion of dignified, old-fashioned labor, the kind where you get dirty, but that doesn't mean he is closed-minded or averse to new technologies. In fact, his new show, Returning the Favor, is one of the biggest things on Facebook. Impressive. Talent runs in his family as well. Mike Rowe's mother, Peggy, has a brand new book coming out tomorrow. It's called About My Mother, True Stories of a Horse-Crazy Daughter and Her Baseball-Obsessed Mother. Mike and Peggy Rowe join us tonight, and we are grateful they are here. Peggy, as you know, your son is a folk hero on this show, beloved by our viewers and us.
You made it weird, Tucker. You made it weird.
You know what?
You promised you wouldn't make it weird.
He didn't tell me it was that kind of show.
I swear, he said G-rated and just like that.
I can see that he is your son. I'm so impressed.
Yes,
you didn't even. What was he like when he was younger?
Oh, God.
You won't believe it, but he was very shy.
Really?
He was. In fact, when somebody would come to the front door, sometimes he would just dive under the kitchen table or into the hall closet. And he was a neat freak. He didn't want to get dirty.
So I was going to ask you what's the most embarrassing thing, but I think you already told us. He dove into the hall closet. How did you get him out?
Well, when the people left, he came out.
Great. Now the headline tomorrow is Mike Rowe's mom explains how he came out of the closet. Thanks, Tucker. Awesome job.
I knew I could get it. My skill as an interviewer. Is that story in the book, Mrs. Rowe?
Not in this book, but it's in my next book.
It's a pop-up.
It's a pop-up. Have you read this book, Mike?
Read it. I wrote the foreword to it. And honestly, you know what makes you awesome? Last time I was on your show, we were talking about good news. And I said, the next time I'm bringing my mother, and you said, go ahead, and you meant it. So I'm sitting here with my mother because she's written the ultimate book of good news. She's been writing me stories for years. I started reading them on Facebook. Publishers fell in love with them, and a book popped out. And this is a book, 19 stories about growing up next to her mother, my Nana, and the two of them together, absolutely nothing in common, loved each other dearly for 70 years. And this book, in these times, in my humble estimation, Tucker, and I don't want to overstate it, Mom, and I don't want to gild the lily in front of you, but this is the balm our country needs. You heard it from me.
BALM, and
right.
I absolutely believe that. No, I'm sincere. This is exactly what we need, and I would say all of our viewers, no matter who they voted for, what they think, no matter who they pray to, are fans of yours and now of your mom's. How long did it take you to write this, Mrs. Rowe?
Well, I've been writing it for years, actually. I have written several stories over the years and published them in newspapers and magazines. And the response was so positive. People loved a feel-good story, and they're true. And so I decided to write some more and put them together in a book.
You want the true story, Tucker?
Yes.
She comes home from Macy's one day and says, "You'll never believe what Nana did." I said, "What happened?" She said, "Well, I was pushing her in a wheelchair and she saw an Orioles jersey. She was crazy for the Orioles. She leaps out of her wheelchair, takes off her blouse, puts on the Orioles jersey. My mother has a heart attack, says, 'Mom, what are you doing?' Nana says, 'Nobody cares. I'm an old woman in a bra.'" Right? Then she knocks a mannequin over. The head falls off, rolls down the aisle. People start scattering. Mom comes home and says, "Michael, I think the time has come to write a book about your grandmother."
So Nana was not hiding in the hall closet when people came over. She sounds like she's pretty self-confident.
She was
I
awesome.
love that.
It sounds unbelievable, but every word was true that he just said.
Oh, by the way, everything the Rowe family tells us, we take at face value. You are the most believable people we know, and I hope you will both come back. And congrats on the book. God bless. I'm getting it tonight. No joke.
Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, one good turn deserves another. Mom picked this up today, and she can't put it down. Ship of Fools. Fantastic.
My kind of reading.
Don't read it. It'll make you sad. It's great to see you both. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr.
Thank you for having
Be
us.
well. Appreciate it.
See ya.
Bye.
A week ago, NBC ridiculed a Republican for his war wound. And then a week later, something kind of amazing happened that's not all bad. And you'll see it next. Stay tuned. Well, just before the midterms last week, NBC ran a not very funny comedy piece in which Pete Davidson ridiculed a Republican congressional candidate called Dan Crenshaw for the way he looks. Crenshaw wears an eye patch. He lost his right eye in Afghanistan. So that happened. People were outraged, and it was an opportunity for now Congressman Crenshaw to be outraged too and demand that Davidson be fired. But instead, something else happened. He didn't demand that. Saturday Night Live apologized, and then Crenshaw appeared on the program.
For people that don't know, the reason you're wearing an eye patch right now is that you lost your eye to an IED in Afghanistan during your 3rd combat tour. And I'm sorry.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate you saying that.
So we good?
We're good. Apology accepted.
Just keep breathing.
So here was a political dispute where everyone stayed calm and kind of reasonable. Nobody's life was destroyed at the end. And everybody came out the other side enhanced. That's a good news story. One of the few. That's about it for us tonight. We'll be back at 8 tomorrow night for the show that's the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Sean Hannity. Next.